Hi, Kari. Thanks so much for spending some time to chat with us today about strategic planning.
Sure, absolutely. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, you too. I wondered if you could just start telling us a little bit about yourself, about Friends of Guesthouse, what you guys do, just to frame a little context for those who might be watching this video.
Sure. So I'm Kari Galloway. I'm the executive director of Friends of Guesthouse. I've been there for a little over 15 years now. And we are the largest women's residential program in the Commonwealth of Virginia for that support women who are coming out of incarceration. And we're the only residential program for women in Northern Virginia. So we have 30 beds, which has grown quite a bit in the 15 years that I've been there. We started with 9. And we've recently acquired an aftercare property and are building out our aftercare program to continue to support the women once they leave the 6-month residential program. So we got a lot of irons in the fire. We're always trying to do something new. And yeah, that's about basically, we get about 400 applications a year to come into our program, and we can only house about 60 to 62 women. So we're constantly looking for new ways to support them.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that context is really helpful. I know you guys have gone through a couple different strategic planning processes over the years. Some have been facilitated, some have maybe not. What has been your driving factor, your decision to use an outside firm to help facilitate your strategic planning thinking?
Um, yeah, so you hit it. We've had a few that were not necessarily facilitated on the outside, and I think it's a little bit harder for me. Definitely, it's harder to participate in something because I need somebody who's grounded and who can lead that process. And um, normally we undertake a new strategic plan when we've pretty much done everything we set out to, or decided that something no longer is a fit for the organization. And in response to the growth that I was speaking about, just in terms of like, there's so much need. Often we've been contacted by outside organizations saying, could you do this? Could you expand to a different part of the state? Can you take more beds? Could you come to our area and do some of your pre-release work? And so those are normally the motivating factors for us in terms of looking to do a new plan.
So I know a lot of times when I talk to people, they feel like, I don't have the time to do a plan, or I don't have time to invest in it. From your perspective, as you've gone through maybe your most recent planning process, were there any happy surprises along the way that you said, okay, that was worth the time and effort that we put into it?
My response to that would be that you don't have time not to do a strategic plan. I think the whole process of so if I could just share, like, working with you, how that's been, because you did our last 2 strategic plans, which were super helpful. And it was really great to have you have that institutional knowledge from the first plan. So we kind of laid a lot of that groundwork then. And you stayed involved and knew what was happening with us throughout that 3-year period that plan was built for. And so then when we were ready to do the next plan, which ended up being a 2-year plan, and engaged Brighter Strategies to do that, it was just so easy to just kind of, let's lay a little bit of groundwork back into this. And for that second plan, we also did the board development, which I think was super helpful. So that sort of dovetailed really nicely with the plan, and it helped inform how the board responded to what was primarily a plan developed and brought forward by the staff. Sharing, what's happening with them, what they're seeing in the community, what they're seeing in the country, and how they would choose to respond to it. So it was nice to have the 2 components together. And I think having a plan forward, I mean, not only do funders usually ask for it, I mean, let's just get real. They like to know, that you're informed, that you're thoughtful, that there's something in place that's sort of guiding your steps. But also, it's like having a roadmap. And every once in a while, the roads change, or you choose to go in a different direction. And or there's new things happening in the world. Look what's happening right now. I mean, this movement of racial justice and conversations about mass incarceration are specifically something that we need to respond to. And I hope that we'll be able to engage in a new strategic plan, because we finished the last one that we did with you, and we're ready to do a new one. We've had a few conversations that were guided by an outside facilitator in January, but they weren't a strategic plan. They were more just like, okay, gauging where we're at right now, where when we're ready to do a plan, just to kind of tee all that up, those conversations, to kind of make sure, again, board and staff are on the same page. And almost consistently, even if those conversations are held separately and then come together, they have the same, where we have a lot of alignment. So that's always a good feeling too, right? That's
Yeah,
the bonus
absolutely.
of it. It's like, oh, okay, we are communicating with each other. We're informed about the priorities of one another, and we're all leaning in the same direction.
That's great. So given your experience, I think any process, there's always room for improvement. As
Mhm.
you look back sort of retrospectively, are there things that you maybe would have done different, or advice that you would give to somebody who's embarking on a planning process, kind of a lesson learned from your experience?
Hmm. I would say, like, way back in our earlier strategic planning processes. Well, if I could, let me back up even more than that.
Sure.
I got the opportunity to do some coaching, and you were part of that coaching, and we talked a lot about what kind of board you have. And so at the time, I think we were we were very operational.
Hmm.
The board had come in before I came and really rescued the organization, and they sort of stayed in that operational mode for a really long time. And I know I expressed a desire for them to move move in a more visionary space, but there was that in between space where you and other people shared, like, well, here's a kind of an interim space that you can work in. And I think once we got that clarified and really got the board more engaged in that way, it helped the strategic plan to go better.
Hmm.
So helping the board to understand what their roles are and to get really strong on that and how they could participate has really helped the plans go better, and for the goals to be more shared across the organization, versus the staff, you know, us all deciding what the goals were, and then everything was assigned to a staff person. Now that we're more grown up as an organization, if you will, there's more sharing across the organization of what should happen and who should drive it. So I do think of that, understanding the what kind of board you have and the role of the board and how they can be helpful, and where you want them to be, for me and for the others in the leadership team, was really critical. And I think I wish we had done some of that work sooner.
Hmm. Okay. Now, I know you said that you guys had just wrapped up your plan and you're embarking on a new planning process. As you think back to the last plan, one of the things I heard you say, and I think you'll agree, is that you guys really worked your last two plans and you engaged in them. You worked towards the goals and progress. How did that play out for you guys as a staff? Did you have regular meetings, or did you have an implementation plan, or what was the driving force that made you actually use the plan as opposed to just sort of sitting on a shelf?
So we did have we did incorporate it into our regular staff meetings, and then
Okay.
we tried to do some exercises around it. I wouldn't say monthly. I would like to say that we were that good, but we tried to stay on track with it. And then when it seemed like things, like, I don't want to say we'd outgrown them, but we kind of decided to shelve them for whatever reason, and we just let that go and didn't like beat ourselves up over it, because that's just part of evolution. You just don't always stay in the same place. Or we researched something and decide, the staff that were doing that came and said, this seems like way too much for us right now. We've got all these other things going on and we really need to focus on this. So I think that was helpful, just giving ourselves like, some breathing space, and for it to be okay for us to not keep pushing, tilting in a windmill that was no longer necessary. That was good. I think the other thing that was really timely with our last strategic plan was that right after we did that, the visioning work, put the nuts and bolts down with Brighter Strategies, we got a Compass grant, which was, the pro bono support for a strategic alignment. So they took the strategic plan and they helped us work lots of areas of it, and came out with some real specific things they thought were doable. And they helped us also release ourselves from some of the pressure of the things that we researched and realized just we weren't in a place to do that. But we were able to really use both of those things in a real complementary way, which is, I think, why we were able to really zoom through some of the strategic planning goals much more quickly and much more comprehensively. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Anything else around your strategic planning process, or any final advice you might want to give people?
I think interview people, that the consulting groups that you want to do the work, and talk to their references and find out what the process was like. You want to make sure it's a good fit. You want to make sure that somebody that you work with is really, understands what your organization is about, what they're trying to achieve, and can really, and where you're at, as a team, where your board is coming from. I think it's kind of a holistic picture. I think people need to do a little bit of homework on all of that to make sure they get somebody, get a team who can really do that for them. And the other thing I really appreciate, and I know you don't want me to plug Brighter Strategies, but I will, and you can put this on the editing floor. I think it's really critical to have time with a consultant who really, like I said before, understands what you're trying to achieve. But and then they do the work, right? Like you give them all this information and they figure out and work with you and your team on how to structure things. But it's really not my job then to lead that process anymore. I get to sit back with the rest of my team and hear and understand what they're interested in and what motivates them and what moves them and what drives them. It's really nice to be able to take somewhat of a backseat at that point and let you lead that process and also facilitate it. If there were issues with team members or board members, it wasn't me asking them to put stuff in the parking lot or asking them to refocus. It was so helpful. You're really good at that. And I really admire that as a skill. I mean, it's not in my wheelhouse, but it is in yours. And so I feel like people just really need to make good, sound decisions, because it's important to have a plan that you feel comfortable with and that you can stand by and really drive forward.
Well, thank you, Kari. It was such an honor working with Friends of Guesthouse on both of your plans, and watching you guys grow over the last 5 or 6 years has been really neat too.
Yeah,
And thank you for carving out time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it.